Hello, and welcome back to Weekly Polls Pick of the Week. This is episode number 60, the Big 60. This is a podcast where we talk about primarily new single-issue comics. My name's Mike, and I'm back here once again with Steve, who has told me I should keep doing the intro, and there's a good reason, because we may have new listeners. And since we shifted to the kind of main podcast, page chewing, it's very likely that we might have some new people, and we welcome you. We hope you join us for this ride. If you are coming for the very first time, we talk about comics that are just, coming to our comic stores or just newly released. In some cases, we are subscribing and adding to our pull list. And we have our own kind of sensibilities and the things that we like. So sometimes not maybe what the mainstream likes, and we're totally cool with that.
Yeah.
As before, we try to kick off with a little question, and Steve suggested one, which is, should we have a kind of DC all-in absolute style reboot every few years? I assume for long-running series. What is your take on that?
Well, I think, okay, so there's a few different sides to this. So first of all, I know we're not going to get like a new 52, because the new 52 is everything reset. So most things. There are some things that they kept that they didn't reboot because they liked it too much. That's a whole nother conversation. Anyway, during New 52, they rebooted everything, almost everything. And they started from number one. So there was 52 titles that started at number one. And it was a complete reboot. Well, like I said, not completely, but for the sake of the conversation, complete reboot. And that lasted a while. And then they ended up going back to the original runs, and they went back to all the numbers. So like Detective Comics, I think it was in the thousands or 900s when they rebooted, or when they did the new 52. When they undid the new 52, they went back to those numbers and back to the original storylines. So I'm not talking about that. What I would like to see is something like Absolute, where it's like an Elseworlds tale, where they take the characters and they give them a new spin, and they give them a different world to play in. Now, they'll never kill somebody like Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman, at least not for long, because there's too much money involved, right? As much as we'd like to see someone die once in a while, and it'd be kind of a neat thing to do, to kind of say, well, Superman died during the battle of whatever. That'll never happen because there's too much money involved. So leave the main titles alone. Give us a new Absolute every 2-3 years, and have a nice run and kill characters off, do crazy stuff. And just when that time period ends, a certain issue, wipe it out and start over again, and give us a new imagining, and maybe even throw different characters in there. So in one, do like a Blue Beetle or a Green Arrow, or the lesser, not the main Trinity. So do someone else, and just go nuts, and just give us, like, it can be a world of peace, and just give us what a superhero would do in a world of no crime. Mm-hmm. What do they do? Or, with Absolute, it's more of a darker tone to it. So, we see how they react in these different environments and situations. So I think give us that every couple of years, and just reboot, and just do something crazy, and do something new and original. Pick maybe 5 different characters and just reboot it, even yearly. Give us 10 issues a year of just this different Elseworlds tale. But I don't know if that's even possible, but I think it would help bring in new people to comics and say, well, there's a number one. I'm going to jump on it. I'll become familiar with this character, and then maybe I'll try the main titles that aren't being rebooted.
I think for comics, I think it's a very interesting concept. I think for me, that's not necessarily what drives me per se, but I know I like what you just said, that, you can bring in new people, because we've said this many times. For the diehard comics readers, I'm sure they love following the same storylines for many decades. and they get, as you have mentioned, they'll get references to something that happened 15, 20 years ago. But for myself, I don't get those things, and I it's too daunting to go all the way back. However, if I did get that opportunity to kind of get into a character for whatever reason, let's say, it's Superman or whatever. I mean, I loved the movies when I was a kid. I loved Superman 2 in particular. I forget if it came out. I think it came out in the 80s. But then I never picked up the comics. I don't know why. So not so much. But I think what really, I would say, yes, we all know about reboots and movies. Sometimes not so good. Sometimes, sometimes they're fine. They just have to be well done. The stories, to me, have to, and I think that's maybe what you're saying, Steve, is, that the authors, the writers get the ability to kind of do their own thing. And that's what we're seeing in some of the more kind of independent comics. And I would also like to see maybe some new characters as well. Why not? But yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, not sure if it'll happen, but I think it'd be nice, even every couple of years, just give us, kind of, and leave the main titles alone. Just give us a reason, just give new people a reason to jump in, and maybe they'll get hooked and they'll hop on the main titles. But, what are you going to do?
I'm laughing because I've got something coming up where I was completely lost, but I will save that for a little bit later.
I can probably guess where you're going with that. I can probably guess. So my first book this week is Batman Full Moon #1. So this is Batman versus werewolves. And where can you really go wrong with that? I think that's especially now for October, for Halloween, it's timely. So it's funny we mentioned continuity. There was even continuity in this one. There was this relationship that Batman's in that he's trying to make work with his crime fighting schedule. And it was kind of like, it's funny because they try to work in the continuity into even these side projects that, well, just kind of like have an offshoot. It doesn't always have to be connected to everything else. But anyway, it's a story about werewolves in Gotham, or a werewolf. And there's lots of other things going on here. I don't think it's just werewolves. There's other things happening in the book that I'm sure they'll build on. The first thing that stood out to me on this one is the artwork. It has a very scratchy, kind of thin lines, not a lot of detail look to it. And it looks, not too much detail, but what really pulls you in is the color. The muddy, kind of dark feeling. You really get that horror vibe from the colors, especially. And the muddied tones really kind of give you that horror vibe. It was a lot more violent than I expected. It was a lot more bloody, I guess, dealing with a werewolf. I mean, he's going to werewolf, and he's going to kill a lot of people. And it was a little light on story, but the characters, the werewolves especially, I do want to see where it came from and what the story is behind it. So, yeah, I had fun with it. I thought I'm not going to write home about it, or, it was not going to go my favorites, but it was a fun book. So I'll be picking up issue #2.
Is it going to be like a limited series? Or
I think so.
Yeah,
I think it'll be limited. Yeah, I don't think it's an ongoing. I'm guessing just a few books, but I can look that up here in a second.
Yeah, I think it was a timely release given the spooky season, as people like to say. I don't think I've ever said that before in my life until now. So. Yeah, you confirm that.
Yeah, it is a Black Label, and it's DC Black Label, which is kind of like the Max line for Marvel, and it'll be 4 total issues. So it'll finish up probably in December, I'm guessing, maybe January. So, but yeah, I thought it was I think it's weird to release these type of books in like summertime. So when the weather gets colder, it feels kind of the perfect time for this kind of thing.
Well, first up for me, I have Green Lantern #16. I'm looking at the comic itself because it says something interesting that I totally fell for. And this is a marketing, I guess, because it does say all in. So I thought, oh, this must be related to the event that took place in that special issue that came out recently. But no, this is not, as far as I can tell, this is not absolute Green Lantern, for example. So I mentioned that, I think, the last time we spoke, and I just completely fell for it. And so that's my fault. The author is Jeremy Adams, and the artist is Hermanico. And we get a nice synopsis on the first page saying that this is building off of the Green Lantern Civil Corps Special Galactic War, I believe, or this might have even been the subtitle, where we learned that there has been, like, I think a planet has blown up. Lanterns have been weaponized. There is some interesting scenes with a battle cruiser, a zombie character that looks to be made out of energy, but to me didn't seem very interesting, called Star Shroud. And I won't go into any more details because I was ridiculously confused. And I only knew one character. I used to like Green Lantern quite a bit when I was younger. So I remember reading like a bunch of the Green Lantern Corps, and I was like, oh, there's all these different characters. And so there is elements of that I like, but I just didn't know what was going on. So kind of a wah for me.
It's funny that they, these characters that they want to portray as like these very, very evil and scary characters have kind of silly names.
Yeah, that Star Shroud also, I think, went by one or two other names, but I just didn't know. I didn't know. But that's my fault for jumping in at a number 16. Maybe I should have got in at number 1. I don't know, over a year and a half ago. Yeah. I don't think I'll be doing it though.
Have you read the Geoff Johns runs, not Blackest Night, Rebirth, and was it Parallax run before that? There was Rebirth. There was another one after that. I forget. But really good stuff for Green Lantern. It kind of great run, and that leads into Blackest Night. So
okay,
yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, I have not read those. I'd love to.
If you like Green Lantern, it's definitely worth reading, I'd say.
Yeah.
So the next one for me is Destro number 5. This is by Dan Waters and Andre Bresson. This is the only book in the Ergon universe that I've kind of latched onto, and this is the final issue, which I was kind of surprised. I think this is leading into kind of it's building on the whole universe. So I think this is setting up things they're going to do later with the character. Because it didn't seem like a finale. It seems like a continuation or kind of an introduction to the character that they're going to use later. So the art really grew on me. It kind of was strange at first, but I really enjoyed it. And I really liked the ideas and themes it kind of played with here, like war and war profiteering. And it kind of presented those ideas in a way that, while it's probably realistic, it is a little depressing that kind of thing happens. Not kind of depressing. It is very depressing, but not only for this war in the book, but also throughout history. So it's always been a thing. There's always been someone profiteering off of conflict and war and death. So I really like that they pulled that in and they referenced history and how it's always been a thing that happens. So I thought that was really neat. The characters are nostalgic for me because I used to be a G.I. Joe fan when I was a kid. So it's kind of neat to see these characters on the page and interacting and kind of have a different spin on them a little bit, and more of a mature adult spin. But yeah, I don't know that it wasn't it's not the best thing I've read, but it was a fun 5-issue run. I'm not sure if I'll continue with whatever they lead into next, but for what it was, I thought it was a fun little 5-issue run.
My question to you is there a Snake Eyes appearance?
No. No, I know.
That was
That's
my
always
favorite.
question.
That was my favorite character.
He's always the coolest character. I think most everyone, I think, loved Snake Eyes because he's just cool.
I think I used to like pretend that I was. Don't ask. I won't.
No, you don't ask me. I won't ask you. Yeah.
Yeah. The sad thing was last year. So next up for me, I have Corvus, Corvus. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. And this is from Dead Sky Publishing. The author is Buddy Boudoir, and artwork by Christopher Sassman. So we are introduced to. It actually starts off in space, and it's like a space battle, and kind of an interesting intro, like in medias res, and we learn that one of the main characters, he's either in a ship or he's operating from somewhere. It's not really clear. They really don't tell you everything that's going on in this issue, but we are then kind of cut to the past. It's a flashback, and we learn the main character who we have seen his name is Daryl Hall, and he works in a video game store, kind of like a, what do you call it, like a GameStop. And he's very good at a particular video game that's a space game. So it's an interesting premise. So we learn that kind of the world is taken over by these alien zombies. That's the part where it was a little bit off-putting, or a little bit too abrupt, where all of a sudden these aliens just kind of attack him after maybe 1 or 2 pages. So we don't really get to know Daryl Hall very well, the character. Is that his name? That's the name of isn't that the name of a band? Anyway, Daryl, I'll just say. So it's just a little bit disjointed, but so there's kind of like some action scenes or whatever. So there is kind of like a Last Starfighter thing going on here, just to mention another kind of 1980s. It's not a franchise. I think it was just one film. So it's interesting. I believe that this character, we're going to learn more about his backstory, but then also how he kind of gets involved in this intergalactic war. The artwork was okay. I felt like it was a little bit kind of uneven at times. And then I'll just mention quickly, there was an author's note that talked about how he's been dealing with anxiety and depression, and how this series for him has helped him kind of deal with some of those issues. And I thought that was touching and very kind of open and bold to hear that from the author. So there's a chance I might continue just to see what happens, but it's an interesting premise. It's just some of the execution for me maybe threw me off a little.
Lots of 80s and 90s now, I think, kind of playing with those ideas and those. It's funny, we think of everything as franchises now. Before it was never really a franchise, but everything's franchise now. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think the Last Starfighter, the movie, I don't think it ever got rebooted, but so it might kind of just be its own thing.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that one this week, Corvus, but I looked it up as you were explaining it, and I didn't see that this week. So, but maybe I'm not missing out on too much. So the next one for me was one that was nearly my pick of the week. And even now, as I'm reading them off, I'm still going back and forth on what should have been my pick of the week, but I'm locked in. So this is Minor Arcana #2. This is by Jeff Lemire. This is by Boom Studios. This is just, I think, when you read something by someone like Jeff Lemire, you see the way he structures his stories and the way that kind of he tells a story, and the pacing and characterizations and the plot. It's just a different level on how he and other creators like him can kind of lay the story out, and it really flows, and there's not these big abrupt changes. I don't think it hurts that he is telling more of a personal story, and it's more focused on characters and not as much on spectacle. But on this one, we still follow our main character who has just returned home from a long absence, and there's more layers added to the story from this book, from this issue. And it's building on the events of the first book, and we're getting a lot deeper into what else is going on. And Joe Flamir's artwork, I think, complements his writing. I know it sounds silly to say, but it is we have these up close shots on the characters. We have like facial expressions, and you really feel like you're up close and personal with them, that you feel like you're there with them. You feel like you're getting to know them. You don't have that much of a distance. So I think that those close-up shots of their faces and their facial expressions and their reactions to things, you really get to know them. You feel like you're there, and it's very personal, and in some, you feel connected to them. So yeah, I think it is really, really good. It's the artwork and the story, everything is fantastic. So yeah, all in all, just really good. I think like I said, I'm going back and forth even as I'm saying this right now, but I'm glad I picked up the series, and I'm looking forward to issue 3.
I'm so happy to hear that you're liking the series. I feel the same. So it's cool. We're on the same ride together, and I love it when it's like a unified vision, right? So it's the writer and the visual artist. The artwork is the same person. I just love that.
Yeah, it has like a very personal feel to it. You kind of, and it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes there's another book we read recently where it was one person who was creating the story, and it didn't completely feel like it flowed. I think there was some disconnect. So it's not all the time, but in this case, it definitely feels very solid. It is very connected. It all works together really well.
So next up for me, I have The Exorcism at 1600 Penn. And that refers to, I guess, the address of the White House. And this is from IDW. The author is Hannah Rose May, with artwork from Vanessa Del Rey. And this is basically a new president has been elected, and it's her first 100 days. But there's a lot more to it than that. I will say, right off the bat here, this is a big issue. I think it's about 50 pages. So actually, you're getting a lot here. I like that. I think that should be one of our discussions one of these times. I am a fan of and it could just be the first issue, digging and giving you more time to sit and get to know, the characters and let the story develop. So just got to say that I'm a fan of that. Now, is this my kind of story? That's another question, but so we do get this kind of, it's basically two storylines. It's the president and then what she's dealing with. And there's a threat of something called the Havana syndrome, which people may or may not know. You can look it up. That may or not be important to the story, but also the new president is dealing with all kinds of challenges from people in the Senate that are opposing her. But the other main part of the story, I would say, is actually her children who are in a new school. So that, I would say, is 60 to 70% of the story is about her son and daughter. And the daughter actually really kind of struggles to fit in, and the son just slides in and like a fish to water. And so you really do kind of see both of them. The daughter, unfortunately, I don't think I wrote down her name, but she's really struggling, and they show her doom scrolling. Like she's on her phone. She's supposed to be these kids are supposed to be in high school, right? And it was just like, I just thought it was very kind of like a commentary on, modern technology issues or internet culture, if you will. At some point, we learn that she has kind of a big seizure, but at least that's what seems to happen. But what we see as the reader is we see some kind of demon looking entity that is rising above her as this happens. So I won't go into too many other details, but just to kind of, as you maybe could mention or could gather from the title, I'm sure that's setting up this kind of, potential exorcism. So I just ask myself, is this the kind of story I'm interested in? I think potentially. I don't usually, frankly, go for political stuff so much. I certainly can, and if it's done well, I'm into it. There's just, given the current moment we're in, I just wasn't feeling that part of it. So the kids part is actually very well done. I think the children, and good character development. So generally, I think it's very decent, and the artwork by Vanessa Del Rey, who I'm going to talk about again later, is great. She's it's very gritty and has a somewhat impressionistic kind of feel.
Well, I'm a little bit I get a little bit surprised because with political stories now, in the height of election season, you would think everyone's a little burnt out with election stuff or with politics. So it's kind of a strange time to choose to do that. I guess it's timely, but do you really want more of that? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I think for our international listeners, maybe go for it. I don't know. Yeah,
that's true. They're like, what are you talking about? What are we in? Yeah. But at least it's not too heavy on the politics, and it's more of the kids and kind of how they fit in. So I like the idea though, that, that's like a nightmare situation, right? For someone that kind of power to be possessed. But I like the setup.
Good.
And I love the artwork too, by the way. That's going to be the reason I buy that book when I go back to the store this week. All right. So the next book for me is Mystique #1. This is by Declan Shalvey and Matt Hollingsworth. It's by Marvel Comics. So this is basically a kind of taking Mystique as a character who has been kind of presented more as a hero. I think in the movies that she was more of a hero than a villain, because at least in the newer ones, the more recent ones, I forget the actress who played her. Anyway, the character in this book is presented more as a spy and a cold-blooded killer, which makes sense for someone who can shapeshift and be anybody. So I like the concept. I think it makes complete sense, and to make her as a very formidable villain and kind of a gun for hire almost. The one I just couldn't stay very interested. I just couldn't. There wasn't enough story. There wasn't enough substance here to keep me engaged and interested. Couldn't really sink my teeth into it. The artwork, Declan Shalvey also does the artwork, and his art isn't the most detailed, because I prefer more detailed artwork, almost like Vanessa Del Rey's, like you mentioned. The kind of a thick, bold lines and some detail. That's very straightforward, but it grew on me. And even though I don't want to say simple, but it is very minimalistic, I guess. The colors are very bright, and it's very kind of a straightforward presentation. But I just don't know that there's enough to really pull me in. And I just wish some of these books would just, especially in a #1, just start the character and just have them fighting nameless, faceless people, and just give us kind of start from the beginning. You don't have to always include other characters in the universe. Just give us the character and then lead into those characters again later down their line. Because when you start introducing all these different named characters that you recognize, it kind of takes away from the main character that you're supposed to care about. And I just get distracted on what am I missing out on, because I don't even know what's going on with Sabretooth, and he's in this book in like 3rd page. I don't know what I'm supposed to know. So just give us the character, give us a setup, give us a faceless person that they're fighting or whatever, and then introduce those later, almost like Kneel Before Zod. That was a perfect example. We got attached to Zod, and there he was battling these nameless people, and then later on in the book, later in the series, you introduced other characters from the DC universe, and then the damn book gets canceled. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people want this, and I'm an idiot. So,
No.
which is completely probable. So I won't be getting an issue 2.
So you can call this guy over here idiot number 2, because I was thinking the same thing. Just like you had mentioned, Kneel Before Zod really kind of took its time, and we got to actually kind of like in this case we could get to know more about like Mystique and where they came from and all that. Like you don't even need a big action scene really.
Yeah,
but I think that's probably the algorithm, if there's such a thing that exists, probably is the opposite, saying you need to have 2 pages dedicated to fighting and a couple of titillating scenes or whatever. I don't know, I'm just making that all up.
Yeah, I think it also probably says, okay, you need to have the analytics say you have to have X amount of known characters or characters that were recognizable in the book to draw other readers in. And for me, I just give us Mystique and just present it like we don't know who she is. And I'm not saying a full blown origin, just start from the beginning and just give us the character and then build on it slowly. But again, I loved Kneel Before Zod, and it got canceled because nobody read it, which is a fucking shame because it was a good book. But whatever.
Yeah. Well, on to the good stuff. We've got our picks of the week, and for me, I had to go with this title called The Creeping Below. Steve, I guess you've talked about it before. And this is from Boom Studios, from Brian Azzarello, who gave us, is it 100 Bullets? I unfortunately did not read that series, but I know it was a long-running series. And again, Vanessa Del Rey. So she was the artist in the Exorcism at 1600 Penn. So I have to pat myself on the back, because actually I think I read it in a different order. But when I read the second book that had Vanessa Del Rey, I was like, this is very familiar artwork. And without comparing the names, I actually figured that out on my own. So I think you've already described this, but I'll just very quickly say this takes place, I thought was very interesting, kind of starts off in, I believe, Oslo, Norway. And, the Val, who's, I guess she's a photographer or journalist. She's interacting we've seen this scene from I think it's a black metal concert. I mean, they share the lyrics and everything. The lyrics are very kind of dark and filled with fuck and shit and hell and all of that. Which I thought I was like, this is a really interesting intro. And then she's interacting with one of the band members who refuses to speak to her in English. So all of the dialogue is, I believe, in Norwegian, but it could be in German. I don't know. I didn't bother to look it up, unfortunately. But that really just threw me, and I found that to be cool, just different. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, she kind of gets taken advantage of. She's very innocent, and she's brought to the woods, and it kind of becomes kind of like a folk religion sacrificial event. But also we learn that there are, things lurking in the woods, but also even in one of the rock concert scenes, we get a depiction of what's all these creepy crawlies below the surface. That was actually beautiful and very grotesque at the same time. Again, the artwork is just, is very dark, gritty. And as I mentioned, well done. So for that reason, it's my pick of the week. I'm very curious. I have no idea where it's going, and I like that.
Nice. Yeah, it is very. Have you seen Jennifer's Body?
No.
There was some elements that reminded me of that, and not in a bad way. Just
Okay.
give me some. Yeah, it reminded me of that a little bit. The sacrifice scene was close, but
I thought about Midsummer a little bit, but
Hmm.
maybe not too much. But it kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that, especially the crown and some of the other wardrobe elements. All right, so my number one, my pick, which is also in your list. So go ahead and go on Vicarious one, and then I'll go into my spiel.
Oh, you want me to go
pick.
first?
Yeah, I want to hear.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I read it too. So yeah, I believe we both read Vicarious #1. This is also from Boom Studios. I guess I'm just grabbing I don't know, maybe I'm just grabbing everything that they're putting out these days. But the cover is also very appealing. And this is by Ryan Parrott and Eleonora Carlini. And we learn about this phenomenon called, and I believe this is the near future, possibly, this phenomenon that is developed called mind walking, where you can basically plug a device into your, I should say the person is called the proxy, and they can put a device into their chest, and for the right price, you can pay or use this person, I think is probably the right word, to mind walk. And basically that means you can see, you can see through their eyes and have sensations, but apparently you can't read their mind. So it's a very interesting concept. I felt there was somewhat of it almost feels a little bit like prostitution in a way. And apparently this is illegal, but people are doing it. People that can afford it. And so this main character we learn about, he kind of is struggling and eventually wants to become what's the like a proxy. And so we learn about, his adventure in becoming that. And there is a little bit of a cyberpunk element going on, I think. I don't know how you feel. And generally I think it's a really great premise, and I liked it. I thought maybe the very last page I was a little bit confused. However, you might have understood it better than me. So, and I'd love to hear your take on it, though.
Yeah, so this one reminded me a lot of Strange Days. Have you seen Strange Days?
Yes, it did. I wasn't going to bring it up because I kept bringing up all these things.
Yes. I keep asking about movies today because it really and I love that movie, but
yeah,
it kind of reminded me of that a little bit. Not on the nose, but somewhat. So with this one, I really like the concept. I really like the idea of being able to use someone else, and I think there's a lot of things we can, like you said, prostitution. There's also pornography online. There's also crimes that you can commit or kind of experience without. We have this buffer of living vicariously and doing all the things that you would never do on your own, but you would do through someone else and use that person. And I think there's some commentary there on having that distance and not feeling connected to each other anymore, or at least that's where we're headed. And we're in this digital world where we don't have that as much of a personal connection anymore. Everything feels far away and disconnected, even though we are all connected. So you feel like this person isn't really a person. It's just someone you can use. So that's kind of where I went with it. The artwork, though, wasn't my favorite. I think the artwork had this manga feel to it. Everyone is like the same shape. Everyone's like tall and lanky and skinny. Well, most of them are. The people who aren't tall and lanky are somehow this really aggressive bad person, or at least like someone who's like an antagonist or someone who's going to cause trouble. So I felt like the artwork wasn't poorly done. I just think the style just didn't quite fit the story for me. I still liked it. It was still fine. The artwork, just the style. The style, I'm not sure it was the right choice for this book, but it didn't bother me so much, obviously, because my pick of the week. But it grew on me. It grew on me by the end. I started to overlook those little things, like everyone's the same shape and all that kind of stuff. But I do like the direction it's going. I do like that we jumped in on it. There's the moment where our main character tries to be a proxy and kind of that experience. I thought that was kind of funny. So yeah, I think it's a great setup, and I do. My only concern is that it's going to be a little too close to Strange Days. I think there's already, on that last page you mentioned, we're already kind of seeing some similarities there with the last page on where we might be going, or you get the impression there's this really dark underworld that our main character doesn't know about yet, that I'm sure we'll get into as we go through the series. But there is this gritty underworld that he's going to experience and have to survive, because there's a lot more happening under the surface than just being a proxy for fun on your weekends and being a weekend warrior kind of thing. So
I have not seen Strange Days, I think, since it came out, or shortly after it came out in, I think it was 1995, but I really liked that movie as well. Mm-hmm. I also felt that it had a manga look to it, but I think you described it better to me. And that was maybe why it wasn't, my favorite, but I do agree. Yeah, it definitely has that premise and the commentary on, how people are kind of living online. Not us or anything, but
no, of course not.
Yeah. No. But yeah, I guess you made a really great point. So I'll probably stick with it as well. So
yeah, I think, and also the manga feel for me came, there's a few panels where the character has like the surprised look on his face, and there's like these stars around him and stuff. Kind of had that kind of those goofy kind of elements to bring levity to the story. So yeah, and that's not a criticism, it's just the style. So it's not poorly done. Like I said, it's just style wise, not sure it was the right fit, but obviously it didn't bother me too much because I'm still here talking about it as my pick of the week.
I mean, should we be surprised to see more kind of mainstream comics looking more like manga?
No,
because it's selling.
It's selling a lot. Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if it goes more that direction, really, because it's going to appeal to those readers.
So how we in the Marvel world, we had the kind of Ultimate series. The X-Men was manga-esque. Look, I did not pick those up, but the Ultimate X-Men was like a manga style artist.
Yeah, I almost picked it up in the first issue. I flipped through it and it's like, nah, it's not for me, because I just didn't. Yeah, not my thing. It may have been great. I noticed that it's good that Marvel is doing different art styles though, because a lot of their books, at least the few that I've picked up, have a very similar art style, and it feels very artificial. It feels very kind of a rubber stamp. It all kind of looks the same, and it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that personalized feel to it. It just feels like that all looks like it was drawn by a computer somewhere. And I don't know that it was. I'm sure someone's drawing it. It just looks very assembly line. Mm-hmm. Just doesn't get it. Just doesn't get me going. So yeah, so that's number 60. We're almost to the point where we can get a senior discount with the podcast. So that's kind of nice. Good news, bad news. But yeah, so those are our picks for the week. If you would like to share your picks with us, we'd love to hear about it. If you have recommendations, want to tell us how wrong we are about how Marvel looks the same or whatever, get in touch. You can find us on the forum at pagetween.com. Just click the link for join our forums, register for an account, and join the small little tightly knit community we have there, and come and say hello. You can also send us a message down below with the link to send us a message and let us know what your picks were, what you're enjoying reading, or if you have questions or stuff you want to talk about with us, let us know, and love to hear about it. But until next week at number 61, we will We hope you have a great week, and we will talk to everyone very soon.
Bye-bye.